Hey guys, welcome to Ben Wrenchin. My name's Ben, and today I'm wrenching on this 2011 Mazda CX-7. I'm going to be changing out the rear shocks on both sides of this car today. This is everything I think I'm going to need for this. One of these days I'll get to the point where the tools that I grab in the beginning are actually all that I need, and I don't end up with 70 more tools than I started with. But I really don't need that much to get this done, so I'm hoping that's everything I need. So I'm going to start by getting the wheel off, and we'll get in there and get the old shock out. Alright, so I started by taking the wheel off. Those are 21mm lug nuts, and I put the wheel underneath the car. Got it jacked up on a jack stand with my jack as a second support. So what I'm looking to replace is this shock right here. It's got a bolt at the bottom that comes through, and there's a nut on this side. Both of those are 17mm. And the top's got a threaded shaft that we can access through the passenger side on the rear. So I'm gonna start with getting the nut off the top of it, and then I'll come down and get this bolt out. So if I open the rear passenger door, this seat's got a button right here. I push that and pull this seat down. And with the seat folded down, there's an access panel right here. It's got a little slot right there to stick a pocket screwdriver in. I'm gonna use this trim tool that I've got and get under there and pop this off. And that gives us access to the top of the shock. It's just got a nut right here. This is a 14mm nut. And the threaded shaft has a hex in it, and it's a 5mm hex. And so I'm gonna use the 14mm socket on this short socket set that's got a hex on the back. That fits into my 22mm wrench. And I can use this and a 5mm hex bit. I've got a long hex bit into my quarter drive socket with a coupler on it. I also have this set of metric hex sockets, and this one's a 5mm, and I've got it on a short quarter drive extension. So I could use either of those to get this out. And so that's what I'm gonna use. I've got my 14mm socket inside my 22mm wrench, and I can get that onto the nut and then get my hex bit through the hole of the socket. And then I can use that to hold the threaded shaft into place while I get this nut off. And since I can't get enough torque with my quarter drive ratchet, I'm gonna use a 3/8 ratchet with a quarter adapter. And that broke my hex bit. So I'll try to just turn the nut first and see what happens. And I am able to turn that nut. It's got a bushing up here. So now I'll try this 5mm hex socket, and I actually don't need the extension. So I use that hex socket with my 3/8 drive ratchet with the quarter drive adapter. And before I break that one too, I'm gonna use a little bit of PB Blaster to hopefully loosen this nut up. And I can let that soak in a little bit, and I'll work on the bottom bolt first. And I think it's safe to say it's gonna be a good idea to go ahead and put some PB Blaster on this nut and bolt as well. And before I do anything with that bolt, I'm gonna raise it up just a little bit with my jack. So I've supported it right here on the lower control arm. Raise the wheel up a little bit, and that's going to relieve some of the pressure on this bolt here. The nut and bolt are both 17mm. So I'm going to get my 17mm wrench on the nut, and I'm going to use the 17mm long socket on the head of the bolt. And there's not a lot of room to turn the socket in here. There we go. Alright, so I was able to turn it with just a ratchet. It's a half drive ratchet on that 17mm socket. And I'm going to keep turning it until that wrench turns. And I didn't even have to touch that wrench. So now I can get my battery ratchet in there and spin that bolt out. And that bolt was actually relatively easy to take out. And it looks like that nut is either welded onto that bracket or it's just rust welded on there. But now since that's disconnected, I can lower the wheel and I can use a pry bar to compress the piston and get that shock out of there. So now all I need to do is get the nut off the top. And so I'll try again with my 14mm socket and this 22mm wrench. I'll put this hex bit through the center, and I'll see if this is any easier to turn now. Ah, there we go. And once I broke it free, it's a lot easier to turn. I'm going to work it back and forth to try to loosen up some of that rust. And now it comes out a lot easier. So I'll just keep working this out. And with the ratchet, it's nice because I can just turn the wrench and hold on to the ratchet, back it off a little bit more, and go back the other way. And once it gets tight again, I'll just back it back off the other way. And I'll just keep doing that until it comes all the way loose. And that way I don't break my other hex bit. And I'll go ahead and use a little bit more PB Blaster and clean up the extra so I don't fill this car with PB Blaster smell. And I'll try my battery ratchet and see what happens. And I can also try a 5mm T-handle in here. Would be nice to have a 22mm ratcheting wrench, but I don't have one, so I'll just keep turning this T-handle. And I'll go back to the ratcheting hex bit. And at this point, I have stripped the inside of the hex, and my hex bit socket set came with a 5.5mm, so I'm gonna try to hammer that in there. And then I'll see if I can use that. And the last thing I'll try is a T30 bit. It fits in there pretty well without any play. And so the first thing I'm going to try is to tighten it up a little bit. And to help me see what I'm doing, I've got a 14mm wrench so I can actually see the top of that nut and see what's going on. So that bit's just turning inside there. It's not doing anything either. I suppose I could try a T35 bit, but I don't have one. And I'm so close to getting that out, but I just can't get it out. And so what I'm gonna do is use this 14mm socket to get these two nuts off, and I can take this whole bracket out. And these are not too bad to take off. So I'll just take both of these off and get the whole thing out. And I probably could have just started here. I wanted to leave this in because my new shock did not come with this bracket. I did see ones on Rock Auto that had the bracket with it, but I thought I would avoid taking this out if I didn't have to. But this is actually way easier to get it out this way. So there's one nut, and there's the other, and now I should be able to push this down and get it through the bottom. And there we go, that's loose. So I can push this down until it's all the way through, and I can come back to the bottom and just pull this through. I can basically push on it with one hand and it'll compress, so this one's definitely worn out. But I'll compress it down and then get the bottom out with the pry bar. And there we go, the whole thing is out. And so with this out, I can grab onto this part with my largest set of adjustable pliers. So there's a large metal washer right here. Once I get my pliers adjusted just right, I can grab onto that. And then hopefully I can use that to turn this nut. And there I'm able to tighten it back down a little bit. And I'm so close to getting that off. But I'll have to switch directions and tighten it back down again and just keep loosening up that rust. Try some more PV Blaster, get some under here and in here, really just about anywhere I can get it in. And since my largest locking pliers are too small for this, I'm gonna try a pipe wrench, and that's not doing anything. I'll try these pliers again. I'll see if I can get enough pressure by standing on it, and that is just not doing anything. And so at this point, I'm gonna have to grab this plastic cover. Like I said, there was one of these on Rock Auto that had the bracket, and I think probably the bushings too. So if I could do it over again, I would have just ordered that one. I'll link it in the description as well as the one that I bought. I will try to hammer this bit in one more time. So since the 5.5 didn't work, I'll move up to a 6, and I'll see if I can hammer in a 6mm bit. So I think I've completely stripped this hex. I don't think any of these bits are gonna grab onto it. And since that didn't do anything and I'm sick of wasting time, I'm just gonna move on to plan C. And I can just cut through this shaft with a reciprocating saw. Make sure to lubricate for heat dissipation. And that makes quick work of it. And I didn't damage the bushing too bad. That was my biggest worry with that, but it actually doesn't look too bad. And so I'll be able to save both of these bushings and this bracket. And I may still be able to save this cover because this piece has a slit in it. So I can try to pry this off and get this last washer and the cover off of here. And so I'll try my sharpest chisel and a hammer. Hey, there we go, I got it off. I'm really surprised that came off. I thought for sure it was just gonna be stuck on there, but all I gotta do is wiggle it back and forth a little bit and it's coming off slowly. And with that off, I can save this washer and this cover. And I can finally see that the inside of this shock is much beefier than the new one. And so I'll slide this down and see if I can get this washer off and save this whole piece. And it looks like that's going to come off too. So I will go ahead and reuse these since they aren't on the new one. And I'll just have to remember how all this came off. And I can't really tell if this washer is attached to this or not, so I'm going to try to get that off. And hope that I don't bust this open and get hydraulic fluid all over my garage. It's got quite a few spots to get underneath it. But I really don't think that I need to save this. Hey, bud. You got a new backpack?
Yeah.
Sweet. So I've got the new one next to the old one. Everything looks the same. This bottom bushing's a little bit smaller than the old one, but the hole is the same size and the bolt fits through it, so that's good. And so everything looks to be the same size. So I'm gonna cut this and hope that this doesn't go flying out. With that off and this cover off, all I get is a new nut. And so I'll take this nut off the new one and put everything back on the way that it was on the old one. So this is gonna go first. And then this washer, and then I'll put the cover on top. And then I think I had this washer, the sleeve, and then I've got enough room for the old bushing and everything else. I've got the old washer on top and the new nut. So I've got it all put back together the same way it was on the old one. It does not have this washer, but I can't separate that from this. So I think it's gonna be okay without that. But now I've got everything I need to get this back in. So one thing that's good about the new one versus the old one is the old had this internal hex that I stripped out. The new one has this slotted post. And I did buy a tool for that thinking that that's how the old one was gonna be. So this is made by Lisle. It's part number 20400. I'll link that in the description. And that's gonna help me tighten the nut on the top of here once we get this in. So now with everything reattached, I can get this new nut on, thread it down as far as it'll go. And this new tool comes with 2 posts. They have different sizes on the ends of them. And so I find the one that fits on the best and slide this other one on top. And this part doesn't fit over this new nut because it is a 5/8 nut. I would have thought one of these ends would be the right size, but it's not. So I can use a 5/8 wrench, get it on the nut, and then tighten it down with this tool. This is a 1/2 inch, which my 13mm socket fits onto. So I'll use that to hold on to the end of the shaft, and then I can tighten this nut down to 33 foot-pounds. And so I'll get my torque wrench on there and just tighten this down until I get to 33 foot-pounds. It really feels like I'm smashing these bushings down more than I need to. So I'll tighten that down while it's in the car. And so now I'll go ahead and put this back in. I'll get this bottom bolt attached and get these bolts back on the top. So I'm gonna start by compressing it a little bit, and then I'll put the bottom in. And I can push down on the top and let it set itself into place. Just like that. And then I can put the lower bolt in, and first I'm gonna put some anti-seize onto the threads. And then I can put it through and reposition it until I get the bolt to go through. I can push it from the bottom. And just thread the bolt in by hand. And then I'll use my battery ratchet to tighten it down. And I'll jack the lower control arm up a little bit to get the top to match up. And from the top I can get these nuts back on, and I'll just tighten these down. And I'll torque these down to 33 foot-pounds. And I can torque down this nut to 33 foot-pounds. It's a 5/8, but 16mm will fit on there. And so now I'm just gonna tighten down this bottom bolt again. I'm gonna start with my ratchet because it needs to go down to 89 foot-pounds, which is pretty tight. So I'll get it as tight as I can with my ratchet and then move to my torque wrench. And there we go. All right, so that one's torqued down, and these are torqued down as well, so I can go ahead and put this cover back on. And with everything torqued down, I can let my jack back down, and I can put the wheel back on. I like to sit cross-legged in front of the wheel, and then I can lift it up with both hands and use my legs as a brace. And then I'll feed a couple of the lug nuts on and take those down as far as I can with my drill. Start the rest by hand, tighten them down with the drill too. And I like to tighten these down a little bit more before I lower the car down onto the wheel. And just get them as tight as I can with the wheel spinning. And last, I'll tighten down these lug nuts to 88 foot-pounds. And with that, I'm done with this side. I'm gonna turn the car around and do the other side. I did use quite a few more tools than I thought I would. That's typical for me. Hopefully one of these days I'll get to the point where I know what I need before I use it, but this wasn't too bad. I'll link a lot of what I used in the description, just in case you wanna do the same things that I did. But now I'm gonna turn the car around and I'm gonna do the same on the driver's side. All right, and with that, I'm done with the Mazda. I used quite a few more tools than I thought I would, all just to change out these two shocks. I would definitely recommend getting the shocks that has the brackets on top of them, all the bushings and everything. That's gonna be way easier than what I did. So I will link some of those in the description. The all-star tools for this project was my adjustable pliers. These came in clutch, as well as this Lisle tool. I'll link this in the description too, but I definitely had to have this to tighten down that nut on the top. So that tool is necessary. I'll link it in the description as well. But I'm done with this for now. I'm gonna go ahead and drive it and make sure everything's good before I give it back to the owner. But that's gonna do it for this video. So thanks guys for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.